Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Fraser. Joining me on the show for the festivities, as usual, my intellectual brother from another mother, none other than the great wizard of historical knowledge himself, Mr. Eric Smith. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
Very hydrated.
Are you hydrated?
I'm hydrated.
Have you been hydrating by practice now? Is this something you're doing for health, or it just happens to be today?
Today.
Oh, okay. Peeing a lot.
Not yet.
Not yet. Good stuff, huh? You know, I saw.
What
this.
Are we doing?
Well,
what is this?
we got a bunch of articles lined up tonight, as usual. Some fun shit to talk about, or things that I thought would be fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But I want to. It's funny. I want to mention this. There's this new documentary, and I don't have an article on this specifically, but I just saw it. It's called The Big Hack or The Great Hack, and it's kind of a political documentary, but not in the sense that it's political in the sense that it ties what these companies and stuff did tie into politics. Okay, but what's interesting about this is, and we talked about this, is like someone had posted something about them and their wife were talking about a garden tool, and then it just popped up on like their Facebook feed or something.
Oh, yeah,
and they're
yeah.
like, that's it. That's final proof that, you know, our microphones are listening to us and all of these kinds of things, right? And they don't. I mean, they do. I'm not arguing that they don't. But what's remarkable isn't that it's not likely that that's what happened in this case. What's more likely is that the algorithm has figured them out enough that in their demographics and everything that this is going to become a thing for them. So this is like predictive technology that's starting to be able to predict people's own lives.
Yeah, they probably
and
went,
what they're going to need.
Yeah. They probably went and checked on gardening supplies on other websites.
And had been recently, so it knew you were gardening. It knew you're about this age group. It knew you're in this demographic. It knows that you live in this region. It knows that
you might have called the local gardening store on your phone.
So it's not a coincidence. It's not like, and it's not necessarily that this thing's listening to you. But that's what this documentary points out, is that data has passed oil in value. And just dollar value. Data mining is now worth more than oil is worth. And that this is a big, and these predictive technologies that are creeping you out aren't necessarily listening to you in the way you think they're listening to you.
Yeah.
It's far worse.
Well, they're listening to you, but you want them to be.
And then there's another piece to this puzzle that says, this thing is predicting what you're going to need.
Yeah. In your life.
And you can't see a benefit to that?
Right.
Am I missing something here? So there's the other side of that equation, too.
It's like, don't bite the hand that feeds you kind of a thing, right? Like if this thing is going to feed you information that's relevant to you and useful, then why would you not want that in your life? It's like an assistant helping you, keeping track of things and making suggestions. It's people that you want to worry about. If the guy down the road is listening in on your phone conversations, that's probably something you should check out and be freaked out about, right? But when the AI is doing it, it's got no motivation. It's just trying to help you.
It just does what it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I understand that. But, you know, not everything is nefarious, right? Necessarily. It's not necessarily
I wouldn't
nefarious.
say AI is. I can see how you could make monster stories out of it, like, you know, because back in the, I don't know, late 60s, early 70s, when Universal Pictures had all those monster movies coming out, you know, you wouldn't see a monster movie about AI because it didn't exist, but what did exist, we made monster movies about. Now that AI exists, we can make one about that, too.
Well, they're doing that now, right? There's, there are movies, really big movies now that have come out about AI, I Am Mother, and some of these different, that doesn't necessarily show it in a very positive, friendly, going to save us all from ourselves sort of light, you know?
And I'm not saying I believe that either. I mean, I certainly don't go through my life trying to get people to buy into and use artificial intelligence. I'm just saying that it seems weird that people get freaked out about it in really, innocuous cases like suggesting what's rake that you would want, or shoes or something, right? Like if it was telling you to kill your neighbor,
we never expected it to be telling us that we need garden tools.
Right.
Things,
yeah.
right?
I mean, like
predicting that.
Yeah. I don't know. I just not something I personally worry about in my life. And maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
I don't know.
My first article is going to change your mind.
Okay.
This one comes from Futurism. Designers want to give 3D printers legs and let them wander the earth.
Okay.
No, it doesn't bug you?
For what reason?
Well, I mean, these things don't have emotion.
To kill and slay?
They can never be
bothers
stopped.
me.
Have you not seen Terminator, man? I mean,
this
is the beginning of the end,
I've
right?
seen Terminator, but these things were programmed to terminate humans. But, I mean, what are these things programmed for?
I guess we'll find out. The Break the Grid initiative has a plan for repairing the environment. Give 3D printers the ability to autonomously navigate the world around them. To that end, the 3 Danish companies behind the initiative, GXN Innovation, the Danish AM Hub, and Map Architects teamed up to imagine what mobile 3D printers might look like, transforming the devices into bizarre-looking robots that can crawl, swim, and even fly.
Okay.
Nothing wrong there? No red flags?
No.
You're good?
I'm good.
The group designed each of its 3 robots to serve a specific purpose. The 6-legged crawling 3D printers would skitter across roads, filling cracks in asphalt, while the swimming 3D printer would mix glue with sand from the ocean floor to build coast protection artificial reefs. The flying 3D printer, meanwhile, would add thermal insulation to older high-rises. Okay, that all sounds very municipal. Nobody's taken over the world yet, right?
No.
While these are currently just designs, GXN founder Casper Jensen believes there's an argument to be made for sending 3D printers out into the world.
An argument.
Here we go.
Here is the argument.
Freeing 3D printers to meet these challenges could be a revolution in the making, Jensen said in a press conference. By enabling robots to crawl, swim, and fly, we can address pressing environmental threats around the world at lower cost and with greater efficiency. That all sounds very altruistic, Eric.
Yeah.
Nothing apocalyptic there, man. I'm a little disappointed in this article. I thought there was going to be definitely more.
Well, maybe that shouldn't be. I mean,
maybe again, it's just us projecting.
Yeah, man. I mean, the only thing that would go wrong with this is if somebody speculated that something would go wrong with it, right? Like,
don't we have to? Don't we always have to sort of envision the worst possible case with things and use that data sort of as a guiding marker to help us make better decisions? Like we can imagine building a building out of like toothpicks, but it doesn't mean we should put people in it, right? I mean, shouldn't we imagine like the worst case scenarios anyway?
Yeah, but not fear them. We should imagine them so that we can compensate for them if it seems relative to the likelihood that they would occur, right?
It's certainly fun to think about, though.
How
horribly wrong things can actually go.
Yeah, sure, definitely. It's way much fun to do that. But I mean, I think in this case, that sounds like they're trying to just do something good with the technology that we have.
Sure. Yeah, it's not necessarily all bad. I mean, there's certainly a lot of good that comes from science and technology. A lot of benefits that come from material science that we utilize every day and don't give a second thought about. You know what I mean? So it's not always bad, but like I said, I think you got to kind of always think about how bad things can actually go and use that as a sort of hey, we should build some barriers over here somehow.
Well, I mean, in that case, I think the worst thing is of course that they're autonomous and they're out and they're not being kept track of.
Sort of.
Yeah, or if they are being kept track of, they're still out in the world and they've got a special ability, right?
Right.
But I think in a lot of the novels and stories that I've read and stuff, and speculations that I've heard, it's like some software AI that is corrupted in some way and hates people, and then it starts taking control over machines like this, right? Rewriting their program and turning them into death machines, like all-terrain death machines, right? And so a lot of these stories are like, by the time we have all these robots and stuff, that's all good and well, but at some point, if the main AI can infect them with code, then they'll all turn against you. Kind of like in the iRobot movie.
Right.
So there is legitimacy in the idea that if you populate your planet with these kind of things, that they're susceptible to that sort of thing.
Well, then the easy solution to that problem is to not make them all connected.
Yeah, if that's possible.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you could just make them individually autonomous, then you don't have to worry about that kind of thing happening. But I don't think that's possible.
I don't know. Not because normally we connect things to a grid and monitor them.
Yeah.
So there's always some connection.
Right.
So, it's like a legitimate concern if that's possible to happen, and it's not necessarily impossible. I don't know.
Because we, like humans, we don't share a hive mind. I think it's arguable whether we do or not sometimes when you look at mass media. But
I wouldn't want to stop the march of progression because I was worried about what AI might do in the future. I don't think that I would want to do that. So I'm okay with what they're doing.
We've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not like this stuff isn't going to happen. It's going to. The question is how do you navigate this stuff in the most ethical, humane way possible? And I don't know what the answer to that is, but nobody does because nobody's been here before, right?
But we shouldn't stop in our tracks. We should keep going.
Just because, right? We shouldn't.
I seen that other one. Yeah. I've heard about this.
This one comes from space.com. NASA astronaut Anne McClain refutes space crime claim by spouses as divorce details emerge. So from her spouse. This is interesting. Space crime.
Yeah, no, I know about this. This is interesting. Yeah.
NASA astronaut Anne McClain on Saturday, August 24th, refuted claims that she inappropriately accessed the bank account of her estranged spouse after details of their divorce were made public in the New York Times this week. So she's in space and getting divorced.
And stuff is still happening on Earth.
That's kind of how time happens, huh? While in the middle of their separation process, McClain's spouse, Summer Warden, has claimed that McClain accessed her bank account from a NASA-affiliated computer network, according to a report from the New York Times on Friday, August 23rd.
Well, she certainly did her best to keep separated from him.
Her.
Yeah, she had a separation agreement, right?
Yeah, but her spouse's name is Summer Warden, has claimed that McClain accessed her bank account from she's not married. You said his. I think she's married to a woman. I'm just making that differentiation.
Okay.
The article spells that out. Warden has accused McClain of identity theft and claimed the astronaut accessed the account from aboard the International Space Station during a recent space mission, and that the agency's Office of the Inspector General is looking into the matter. So, but wait a minute. It's not like she broke the law as a function of specifically being in space.
No.
So does that count as a space crime?
I don't know. The article I read said that NASA was looking into it.
Well, that's what they're saying now. So the Inspector General for NASA. Today, McClain said in a Twitter statement that there's, quote, unequivocally no truth to these claims. Quote, we've been going through a painful personal separation that's now unfortunately in the media. McClain continued, I appreciate the outpouring of support and will reserve comment until after the investigation. I have total confidence in the Inspector General's process. That's generally what someone will say when they're guilty as fuck. No, I mean. The matter is currently being investigated, and according to this tweet by McClain, she will not be speaking about the claims anymore until the investigation concludes and is resolved. NASA has also responded to the claims made against McClain. The agency praised her accomplishments and career accomplishments while stating that they cannot comment on personal matters. This is just normal shit that people go through in life, and it just happens to be that somebody is an astronaut that's going through it.
Yeah.
Why is this news?
A big word giveth and little words taketh away sort of a situation.
Yeah.
They're just trying to make a big deal out of it because she was in space at the time that she accessed the account. But other than that, it's nothing special.
This is a 50% of.
It's not Outland.
It's right. We don't have people like selling space narcotics and
killing people, and
they're going on like psychotic breaks and unplugging themselves from oxygen supplies and shit. That's Outland, right? Sean Connery, and that was a great movie, man. I loved that movie. Still probably holds up today.
It is. It's a really good movie.
This one comes from National Geographic, Mr. Smith. Colossal volcano behind mystery global cooling finally found.
Ooh.
Oh. The eruption devastated local Maya settlements and caused crop failures around the world. That's a big-ass volcano, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like, I know I always like to talk about apocalyptic shit on here, right? And this happens to
and
be
now
one
this
of
is
those.
a Mayan apocalyptic stuff.
But yeah, I mean, this is a, if something happened at Yellowstone, I think is this type of shit, right? Where it could throw the world into like the dark ages again.
I don't know how big it was. That other one is not really even a volcano, but like bigger. Caldera. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if that's what this is or not, but it might be. I don't know.
The ices of Greenland and Antarctica bear the fingerprints of a monster, a gigantic volcanic eruption in 539 or 540 AD that killed tens of thousands and helped trigger one of the worst periods of global cooling in the last 2,000 years. Oh, well, then that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, because there was a period, I've heard about this, like many ice ages and different shit like that, where no one knew why, but they were recorded, right?
Is the one they call the Younger Dreyfus period or something?
Maybe. Now, after years of searching, a team of scientists has finally tracked down the source of the eruption. The team's work, published in Quaternary Science Reviews, never heard of that, lays out new evidence that ties the natural disaster to Ilopango, a now dormant volcano in El Salvador. Researchers estimate that in its 6th century eruption, Ilopango expelled the equivalent of 10.5 cubic miles of dense rock, making it one of the biggest volcanic events on the Earth in the last 7,000 years.
Lots of ash and rock.
The blast was more than 100 times bigger than the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption and several times larger than the 1991 eruption of Mount Pinatubo. I don't remember that. It dealt the local Maya settlements a blow that forever altered their trajectory. Oh, I thought it was, wasn't that about the same time that the Spaniards made contact with them too? Again, I could be pasting.
When was it? 500?
530 something, 539 AD, 540 AD.
They might have been a little later than that.
Okay. So they got double whacked.
Yeah, I think they might have been around like maybe 1100 or somewhere in that area.
Maybe. Quote, "This is the largest eruption in Central America that human beings have ever witnessed," says lead author Robert Dahl, a geologist at California Lutheran University. "The importance of the event is even greater, both how the Maya overcame it and how it impacted what happened next." The new work helps solve a long-time geologic mystery. Historical accounts that date to 536 describe a dark fog that dimmed the sun and ushered in a wave of crop deaths. Until recently, scholars were open to the idea that these clouds were the remains of an asteroid or comet. But modern data confirms that the event was volcanic and that it was 2 volcanoes up to 4 years apart, not just one. Ugh.
That's the bad luck.
Jesus. These type of articles fascinate me because the Earth, the planet, it does not give a shit that we can launch satellites into space.
No.
Like it's completely inconsequential, and it could do this to us again.
Sure.
Pretty much whenever it feels like it.
Yep.
Right? I mean, not to be dire, but I mean the geology and the physics and the science of all of it says it may not matter how smart we get. It could just be like done.
And this is when I think about that, and I think about how when we talk about things like precession and the Earth's spin and orbit, and how the core still spins and provides a magnetic field and things of that nature. I also think about that when I hear about these large eruptions of volcanoes. You know, I mean, sometimes people think, wow, you know, wouldn't it be running down by now? It's like, well, you know, it's still got enough juice in it where some bad shit could happen, you know.
And does.
Yeah. So
it does happen, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's like another pointer to that's the process that goes on down there, and that we have to deal with that up here.
I just love this shit because it's like, you know, and you think you got problems right now, right? Because
2 volcanoes could explode in the next 4 years.
And it's like half the population of the planet's like done.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing about birthdays with me, right? That's why I say they're the most venerated sort of celebration you can have if you've survived another 365 days on the planet without being killed or shot or in a car wreck or having 2 volcanoes explode in your backyard or whatever, man. Like, congratulations, you survived another 365 days, because nobody cares about you. Certainly the Earth doesn't. Probably a lot of people don't too, maybe a few, but for the most part, you're here on your own, so good luck.
Yeah, good luck, and you made it.
Yeah. Have a present, right? Yeah, a drink.
Have a drink. Do something special for yourself.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that makes sense to me.
You fucking made it. So in the vein of apocalyptic things, what do you think kills more humans on the planet than anything, though? Is it volcanoes, asteroids? You know what it is?
You mean at once?
Well, period.
Well, I don't really know. I know that it's always something I don't think it is, like suicides or heart attacks or something weird,
The deadliest hunter of humans on the planet. In this introduction to his book, The Mosquito, Timothy C. Weingard profiles the creature that has changed the course of war and empire and survived every attempt to wipe it out.
Because of, like, malaria transmission and stuff.
That's what it's the sneaky shit you don't see coming, man. You're busy building missiles, and a mosquito is like, fucker. I got your number, bitch. The deadliest hunter of humans on the planet, the mosquito. And this introduction to his book, The Mosquito, Timothy profiles, blah, 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 blah. We are at war with the mosquito, a swarming and consuming army of 110 trillion enemy mosquitoes patrols every inch of the globe, save Antarctica, Iceland, and the Seychelles, and a handful of French Polynesian micro islands.
I think one of them we did a story about where they killed off 98% of the mosquito populations with like genetic
altering, and
that might be one of those islands,
like breeding techniques and stuff, right?
And these guys,
the biting female warriors of this droning insect population are armed with at least 15 lethal and debilitating biological weapons against our 7.7 billion humans, deploying suspect and often self-detrimental defensive capabilities. In fact, our defense budget for personal shields, sprays, and other deterrents to stymie her unrelenting rage has rapidly risen, has a rapidly rising annual revenue of $11 billion.
Jeez.
Just to fight mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And yet her deadly offensive campaigns and crimes against humanity continue with reckless abandon. While our counterattacks are reducing the number of annual casualties she perpetrates, the mosquito remains the deadliest hunter of human beings on the planet.
Imagine if you didn't fight them at all. You never sprayed any chemicals on them ever. You just let them go. See what happens.
Right.
Could this be the mini apocalypse that you've been waiting for?
You've been waiting for. Or some sort of bloodborne disease could just come along so easily and be distributed and wipe us all the fuck out.
In other ways, yeah.
We're going to be like, but we have aircraft carriers, Eric, and we have fighter jets, and we have...
Who's going to fly our jets when we're gone?
Yeah, fucking mosquitoes like, I don't care. And yet our deadly offensive campaigns, did we already read that? Yeah, continue with reckless abandon while our counterattacks are reducing the number of annual casualties. I read this, didn't I?
Yes, sir.
I got to learn to fast forward. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has contributed nearly $4 billion to mosquito research since its creation in 2000.
Wow, we spent $4 billion trying to figure this shit out.
Not we.
Somebody has.
Bill and Melinda Gates. Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft.
He does not like to be bit by mosquitoes, does he?
Well, I think they got shit tons of money, and they can sort of look at a Pareto chart and go,
you know what?
What kills the most people? This. Let's focus money specifically here and see if we can change that.
See, I see him sitting at home.
Unlike what governments and things that are supposed to be doing all this shit for us do.
See, I see him sitting at home going, man, I think I'm going to get another cup of, something just bit me. You know what?
I
think we might try to get rid of fleas on the planet now.
Bitch, I got money like you ain't never seen money.
Right. I will hire a team of scientists to swat you.
I will eradicate you as a species. The contest is not even close. The heavyweight champion and our apex predator in perpetuity is the mosquito. Since 2000, the annual average number of human deaths caused by the mosquito has hovered around 2 million. We come in a distant second at 475,000, followed by snakes at 50,000. What comes in second? Humans come in a distant second. Oh, of
killing each other. Yay.
Now I get it. Well, thank God we're in second place.
I know, right?
Followed by snakes, kill 50,000 people. Dogs and sand fleas, 25,000. And tsetse flies. And the assassin or kissing bug, 10,000 each. The fierce killers of lore and Hollywood celebrity appear much further down our list. The crocodiles rank 10th. 10th? Still? They're
passe.
Dude, okay.
They're from ancient times.
Wait a minute. Time out. Dinosaurs are still the number 10 killer of human beings on this planet.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're prehistoric.
Well, yeah, I mean, they made it to modern times, but their lineage definitely goes back to prehistoric times.
What the fuck is happening? It's number 10. Next on the list are hippos. Elephants and lions at 100.
Lions aren't doing so good, are they?
They're fucking mailing it in. The much slandered shark and wolf share the 15 position, killing an average of 10 people per annum. It's, you know what it is? There's some kind of campaign by the mosquitoes to make sure we don't know that and to keep vilifying the sharks and the wolves. The mosquito has killed more people than any other cause of death in human history.
It just feels like that made everything else redundant that we just read. Like, okay.
Mao, Hitler, Stalin, nothing.
Amateurs.
The mosquitoes got them all whooped. Statistical extrapolation situates mosquito-infected deaths approaching half of all humans that have ever lived.
That's just fantastic, man. Jeez.
In plain numbers, the mosquito has dispatched an estimated 52 billion people from a total of 108 billion throughout a relatively brief 200,000 year existence.
Wow. Impressive.
Mosquitoes are bad motherfuckers, man.
They are.
They do not get do not get the notoriety they deserve at all. Am I wrong?
Yeah, man. I had no idea. That's crazy.
See,
there's some historic facts.
Get to know
half
some
the people in all history.
Listen to the show. You get to know some shit. Huh?
Yeah, there you go.
This one comes from. Now I'm fascinated by this. I keep talking about this all the time. Super science or super materials and some of the things that's happening. Yeah. One of the ones that's got me most turned on is graphene.
And
we talked about this, like cell phone batteries that you can charge in seconds and they last for days. Remember?
Yeah.
So we had some like conjecture on that.
Yeah.
Well, this just came out. So this is from graphene-info.com. Skeleton Technologies, graphene-based supercapacitors to power Skoda trams and Mannheim. Here comes a bunch of more of me trying to say German words. The European developer of graphene-based supercapacitors and energy storage systems for transportation and grid applications will supply supercapacitor systems to Skoda Electric, a traction equipment manufacturer, for 114 trams to be delivered by Skoda Transportation to Mannheim, Heidelberg, and Lüchow in Germany. The system recuperates the braking energy of the trams and uses it for reacceleration, saving energy and decreasing cost. Supercapacitors are ideal for this application due to their high efficiency, reliability, and ability to recharge in seconds. Now, do you understand why that's so important?
Well, every time that they break, they're saving the energy for acceleration, storing it temporarily and quickly in batteries, and being able to just basically reduce the extra fuel that you got to do for acceleration.
So in a traditional vehicle, like let's translate this into like a car. You use a bunch of energy going up the hill, but you've stored it in altitude by going up the hill. Mm-hmm. What we do is when we go down the other side of the hill, instead of trying to recapture that energy to use later, like we just scrub it off with brakes and we just turn it into heat and get rid of it and just dissipate it into the atmosphere. So what these technologies give the ability to do then is to store that energy. Now, you think, okay, well, is that a big deal? Yeah. Things that start and stop often, period, are huge candidates for this type of technology and could reduce. I mean, okay, so if it was 100% efficient, if it worked, 100%, it would reduce the energy consumption by 50%. Like you can get all of that back. You stored it and then you get it all back. It's never going to be 100%. But even if it's 20, 30%, it's a big game changer. Yeah, it's an enormous game changer.
Efficiency has just got more efficient.
Well, you have to think about anything that goes up and down. It's not so instead of thinking of it, a lot of people think of it as, well, so what? It's a car. No, it's everything that goes up and down, everything that starts and stops. You can dramatically reduce the amount of total energy consumption of that thing with these types of technologies.
Yeah.
That's huge because the things that cost us the most, that gobble up the most of electricity, move us or lift shit up and down.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like this is part of like how our world works.
That's why you have lower gas mileage in the city than you do on the highway too, because you're doing more stopping and starting.
Right. Yeah, because the highway is just constant speed and efficiency. Then then you're great.
Yeah.
But in town, have you been in a car yet that turns itself off?
No.
I tell you, that's a treat. First time, because I get rental cars all the time, and a lot of rental cars that you get are like newer. Well, they're super new. They're within 2 years old. And I got this rental car, and I pull, so I get it, and I'm driving, and I pull up to the first stoplight we're like right out of the airport, and boom, the engine shuts off. I'm like, what the fuck is going on, right? So I like take my foot off the brake, and as soon as I took my foot off the brake, the engine started. And I was like, whoa, and I put my foot back on the brake, right? And then it didn't turn off again. So I was like, that was weird. So then the next stoplight I stopped at, I hit the brake. As soon as I came to a stop, the engine shut off. Okay. And so it took me a couple times. I kept taking my foot off the brake and the engine would start again. Then it dawned on me that this is like a fuel efficiency thing.
Yeah.
Once the engine warms up to a certain point, if you pull up to a light and you come to a full stop, it'll shut your engine off. But if you need to like move up a little because you're in traffic, then it just leaves it on. Oh. But if you're like stopped at a light and you're not going anywhere, it just leaves your engine off until you take your foot off the brake.
Interesting.
Unless you're in Florida and you have the air conditioner on. Okay, then you got your foot on the brake and you're sitting there and they're like, oh, the engine's off. And then your car starts getting a little too warm inside. It has to turn the engine back on to turn the air conditioner back on. Oh. So that's another trick. I don't know why I went down this, but anyway.
It's interesting. Start and stop.
Well, so these are like what a super cap is like a hyper battery. And this is where you end up with cell phones that you can charge instantly and then the batteries last forever and stuff. That's another byproduct of this is how fast we'll be able to charge batteries and store energy.
Yeah.
So it's really, really, I mean, this is like world altering shit that nobody knows about. And graphene is like the reason all of this is happening. It's an amazing material. You'd think more people wouldn't. It's like literally the unknown rock star of materials now. Like nobody knows about it.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts, huh?
Everybody should know.
This comes from Reuters.com. Russian spacecraft carrying robot fails to dock with space station.
Oh.
So they're sending a robot up probably to help hide the evidence from the astronaut that's been
to investigate.
This is the investigator.
You're right. This is how NASA checks on it.
A Russian Soyuz spacecraft carrying a humanoid robot failed to dock with the International Space Station on Saturday, Russian news agencies reported, citing a live broadcast. The FEDER, or Final Experimental Demonstration Object Research, robot on its way to the ISS on a planned 2-week mission to support the crew and test its skills. I told you. The docking process originally planned for 0530 GMT, put in that military stuff, right? Failed due to issues related to the automatic docking system. News agency Interfax cited NASA TV as saying, the spacecraft is currently 96 meters away from the station and officials plan to attempt docking again on Monday morning. Reported citing Russian's Flight Control Center. The Skybot F-850. That sounds like something you buy at Walmart, doesn't it?
Skybot.
The Skybot it's a F-850. It's like a Ford. Is the first humanoid robot sent to space by Russia. NASA sent humanoid robot Robonaut 2. Oh, we had 2 of them. To space in 2011 to work in hazardous environments. FEDER is the size of a human adult and can emulate movements of the human body. The ISS is a joint project of space agencies, blah, 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 U.S., Canada, Russia, blah, blah. So they couldn't get Robonaut into space.
Well, I mean, they're going to try again.
It was a fail. It was an AI fail. Didn't work. Of course, I don't think Robonaut's probably, or what is his name? The F-850 is probably driving. He's just sort of a passenger. It's just sort of a passenger.
It's equipment. It's equipment on board a shuttle.
Yeah, I don't generally call equipment he or she. Isn't that weird? Where did that come from?
Anthropomorphism.
Yeah. Well, it kind of does look like a human. Now it doesn't have the picture up, but it did. Kind of reminds me of Bender from Futurism. It does. I wonder if it's just as sarcastic. We've done enough gloom and doom for the day, I think, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, there's a little bit of hope in some of that.
So I thought this one was pretty cool. This comes from Scientific American, where you talk about this stuff quite a bit. The search for truth in physics. How close can physics bring us to a truly fundamental understanding of the world? So it's a big question, right? It's like, how much does it actually know?
Right. Yeah, it is. It's people want to know what stuff is,
right.
Like stuff around them.
Physics may seem focused on the objective determinations of facts, yet the field has just as many, perhaps more struggles with the notion of truth as any other discipline. Quantum mechanics, for instance, suggests that particles have no definite reality. By most interpretations, their properties are undecided until measured. So it isn't there until you measure it. That's a trip. Lately, scientists, I heard that Lately, scientists are interested in how the uncertainties of physics affect one of the largest uncertainties of science, the question of how consciousness operates.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because we talk about OR quite a bit on here, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about it from the standpoint of quantum physics.
Yep.
I felt that this was pretty relevant.
Yeah.
Physics seems to be one of the only domains of human life where the truth is clear-cut.
Maybe.
The laws of physics describe hard reality. They are grounded in mathematical rigor and experimental proof. They give answers, not endless muddle. There is not one physics for you and one physics for me, but a single physics for everyone and everywhere.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's kind of, well, like I've said this before, man, if there are laws that indicate a sentient God or a constructionist God of some sort, it's laws like that H2O is water, no matter where it is in the cosmos. All we debate is whether it's a solid, liquid, or gas. That's it. If that's an atom, or if those atoms form together to make a molecule, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
And that you have that configuration, it's water.
Yeah, no matter where.
And that law cannot be broken by people. It's not arbitrary that way.
Right, yeah.
Physics often seems weird, but that's a good sign. Oh, wait, I skipped a line. There is not one physics. Okay, I already said that. Physics often seems weird, but that's a good sign. It is not beholden to preconceptions. In a world that can seem claustrophobic, where the same debates go around in circles, physics injects some genuine novelty into life and jolts us out of the ruts we fall into. Ruts. Physics is also the bedrock of the broader search for truth. If you follow the chains of explanation in other sciences, you eventually wind up in physics. True.
Agreed.
The success of physics and its role in grounding other sciences support a broadly naturalistic and physicalist worldview. That all phenomena have a physical explanations, and that notions such as élan vital or incorporeal souls have no place in serious thought anymore. Physics does not dictate how we run our lives or resolve pressing moral dilemmas, but it sets the backdrop against which we decide these questions. Ready?
Yeah.
So here's where I think it's going to present. You can tell this is a science fucking article, can't you?
Well, I do like that last line.
It set it up. I mean, it took its time, though, but goddamn, let's get there. Yet, Eric, if physics strikes most people as truth-seeking at its purest, it doesn't always seem that way to physicists themselves. They sometimes seem to be struck by a collective imposter syndrome, although they may presume that the truth is out there and they are capable of finding it. They have to. Or what would be the point? They have their doubts, which surface in informal discussions at conferences devoted to the broader direction of their subject, and renewed efforts to reach out to philosophers for help, and in books and blogs for the general public. These worries are most acute in fundamental physics, which is not the entire subject, but does play an outsized role in it. We talk about physics a lot, don't we? The truth can be elusive even in the best established theories. Quantum mechanics is a well-tested theory, as a theory as it can be, yet its interpretation remains inscrutable.
I suppose that's at the crux of a lot of what I would be saying in situations like this. I am reputing to be talking about a set of agreements that a lot of people have agreed upon, right? And as that last line just said, these things are bore out through experiments and stuff, and so within that framework is how I guess we would discuss that, right? Not outside of that framework, because then we'd be talking about things outside of the framework of what could actually be realized and tested in an empirical sense.
Right.
If you couldn't realize and test something in an empirical sense, how practical would it be to your life?
Right. Not at all.
And maybe not even to reality.
Well, you certainly couldn't base any kind of life dependent solutions on it. You'd be rolling the dice, right? A bench scientist faces more concrete problems. Is a wire broken? Is the code buggy? Is the measurement a statistical fluke? Still, even these prosaic worries can be surprisingly subtle, and they are not entirely divorced from the overarching questions of physics. Everything must be judged within a broader framework of knowledge. Again, not arguing that, right?
No.
Many physicists take these troubles to mean that their field has gone astray and that their colleagues are too blinkered to notice. I don't know what that means. But another reading is that the elusiveness of truth is an important clue. Unlike other domains of human life, the difficulties with truth that physicists face come not from dissembling, but from the brutal honesty. From being completely frank about our limitations when we come face to face with reality. Only by confronting those limitations can we overcome them. Misgivings about the progress of physics are hardly new. As long as there have been physicists who worry their field has come up against an insurmountable barrier. Research is always a muddle when you're in the thick of it. It seems remarkable that we humans could understand reality at all, so any roadblock could well be a sign our luck has finally run out. Do you think that there's a chance we're going to get to a point that we just don't have the instrument technology to go any further?
Well, I think that a lot of quantum physicists probably have felt like that before machines like the Large Hadron Collider was built. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, like say some of those people who were working in the 60s, right? Because quantum physics started somewhere in the mid or early 30s. So by the time the 60s come along, you've got some substantial stuff to be working with and working on, right? You're in the thick of whatever it is, whatever quantum physics is becoming for real, right? And so you probably look at this data and your math and what experiments you have and think to yourself that none of this can really ever be tested fundamentally. There's never going to be a machine that takes up 2 or 3 countries worth of space that is miles in diameter.
And probably energy consumption too to make it happen.
Right. Yeah, that's never going to be built, especially if you would be thinking that maybe in the 60s, right? Unless you thought America was going to do it.
Right.
And America did have some options of doing that sort of thing first, but they refused to do it. They thought it was just crazy to be building these giant machines to prove that kind of stuff, right? So these people probably felt like there was never going to be no hope, because I can remember in the early 80s there was supposed to be one built in Texas, a cyclotron, and they were going to do it, and they had dug out tunnels and stuff for it to put in the machinery, but then they closed down the funding on it, and it never happened. So, eventually the CERN laboratories built the Large Hadron Collider, and some of this stuff got to be tested. Things like the Higgs boson. It was a big deal that Professor Higgs got to see the data.
There's a documentary on Netflix called Particle Fever about it that's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, because it went from theory to reality, just like a singularity did, right? So it was a big thing, and they brought him in there because they knew a lot of people in his field in his day, and certainly people who had died before him, because he was pretty old when that happened, had went to their deaths not knowing if any of their theories could ever be proven. He got to see his proven.
Right. No, that's kind of interesting when you think about that, right? Yeah, a lot of the people that propose the theoretical math never get to see the experiment that bears them out to be true.
Because it's so cutting edge and theoretical. It takes
so
time
far
to even
ahead.
build a machine to even figure it out, right? But the fact that you can build a machine is amazing. And so, yeah, I do agree that there's a lot of people like that
feel that way.
Yeah.
But do you think that we'll ever reach the end of the road? Is there a theoretical end of the road? Or do you believe there is, where you're going to get so far where we just can't go any further?
I would say no, but it's just a belief.
Okay. There's always going to be a material science that'll get us there somehow.
So far, it seems that
it's
way.
It's really borne out that way, hasn't it?
So far.
And they're still making huge innovations in material science.
And we're creatures that make tools, and we're creatures that instinctively tear apart our universe and reassemble it.
It's what we do, man. Over the generations, physicists have oscillated between self-assurance and skepticism, periodically giving up on ever finding the deep structure of nature and downgrading physics to the search for scraps of useful knowledge. Pressed by his contemporaries to explain how gravity works, Isaac Newton responded, quote, "I frame no hypothesis." Niels Bohr, commenting on quantum mechanics, wrote, quote, "Our task is not to penetrate into the essence of things, the meaning of which we don't know anyway, but rather to develop concepts which allow us to talk in a productive way about phenomena in nature." So it's really just to measure everything. Is kind of what he's saying.
Yeah.
Because if it's measurable and repeatable, then you understand at least how it affects reality. You don't necessarily understand how it works, but how it affects reality is highly repeatable.
Yeah. And these guys here, like Newton, right, falls right into that category. He was able to describe something that couldn't be proved and thus measure the universe, right? And so he's saying, I frame no hypothesis, because he didn't actually understand what gravity was.
Right.
So he's admitting that there's shortcomings. Even though he can observe it and use it and speculate on it and calculate with it, he can't tell you what it is.
Right.
Same thing with Niels Bohr, who was like really famous for explaining how the periodical table of element came about in the first place through heavy element star and how that works, right? He was one of the fundamental scientists that give us our current understanding of how stars work and how we get the fuel that fuels the stars. And he is saying there, basically, he's being humble and saying, look, I can't tell you how the universe was created.
I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, I can't say how the universe was created, but I can tell you how these stars are working with what we have around us.
Right.
I can.
Yeah, how it all got here to begin with, I don't have that answer. That's more a philosophical
what it's doing, we can
anyway.
measure and talk about, and within that framework,
and predict.
Yeah, and discuss and speculate.
Both men's views were complicated. Newton did, in fact, frame several hypotheses for gravity, and Bohr at other times said that quantum theory captured reality. On the whole, though, they made progress by setting aside grand questions of why the world is as it is to begin with. Historically, physicists eventually do return to those questions. Newton failed to explain gravity, but later generations took up the challenge, culminating with Einstein's general theory of relativity. The interpretation of quantum mechanics came back onto the physics agenda in the 1960s, and though unsettled, has spun off practical ideas such as quantum cryptography. That's a new one on me.
Oh, yeah, and it's gotten better. Like, may I interject here that I have recently read where scientists were able to quantum teleport three-dimensional objects instead of just two.
I just skipped an article on that.
So like they were doing ones and twos before, like quantum teleporting ones and twos, the information that was either this way or that way, but now they're able to do three different poles, or essentially a 0, a 1, and a 2. It can be either one or, and it's like a three-dimensional object in a sense they can describe mathematically now when they transmit information. So it's a paradigm shift in the type of information that we're able to send at faster than light speed.
I wonder if it's degrees of 1, if it's like 0, 2, and degrees of 1.
I don't know.
Because that's analog, and that's a whole other level of information transmission.
They say it's 0 in between.
Interesting. It's not there at all. What the fuck, dude?
It's there as a placeholder, though, so it does have significance, just like the Mayans considered it in their math.
Right. Well, 0 is a placeholder, right?
Yeah.
So there's some support for that in the quantum universe, that's actually a real thing, a third state of existence.
Yeah.
Not. Oh, my brain's bending, bro. What reawakens physicists' curiosity is the sense that, as the late philosopher Hilary Putnam put it, the success of physics theories would be miraculous if they were not attuned to reality. Even more basically, how can we be doing experiments if there isn't something real to do them on? This position is known as realism. It holds that entities we do not directly observe but infer theoretically, such as atoms, particles, and space and time, really do exist. Theories are true because they reflect reality, albeit imperfectly. The cycling between realism and the opposing position, anti-realism, will undoubtedly continue as each evolves under pressure from the other. Okay, I don't know what anti-realism is. That's a new one on me. But yeah, here we go. This competition has been good for physics. Anti-realists, physicists, philosopher Ernst Mach,
philosopher
Ernst Mach, inspired Einstein to rethink how we know what we know or think we know. Dick. That set the course for all that followed in physics. When we accept we see the world through colored lenses, we can compensate. Okay, I agree with that. Yeah, everybody's got a bias. If you don't accept that you have a bias, then you're fucked. Some features of reality are relative to an observer, whereas others are common to all observers. Two people moving at different speeds may disagree on the distance between places, the duration of an event, or, in some cases, which of the two events came first. The dispute between them is unresolvable, but the arithmetic combination of distance and duration, the spatio-temporal distance, is a fact common to both, and variance define objective truth. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. If then you just quantify it by the same measuring stick and then figure out who's right. That's all they're saying. God, that was a lot of fucking words. In addition to the generic concerns that physicists of the past shared, physicists today have come up against many specific and unexpected limits to knowledge. Almost no matter with interpretation of quantum mechanics you choose, some things about the quantum world are beyond us. For instance, if you shoot a photon at a half-silvered mirror, it might pass through or it might reflect off, and there's no way you can tell what it'll do. Is that true?
Oh, yeah, that's where you get things like pilot theory.
The outcome is decided randomly. Some think that the photon does what it does for no reason at all. The randomness is intrinsic.
Right.
Others think that there is some hidden reason. Well, okay.
Right. Like some people think it's pilot theory and some people think that it is truly random. So you will hear people say things like they're like when you roll dice and stuff and you're really nerdy and you're playing D&D, people will say something like, yeah, there's no truly random number that you can generate, because of the way physics works. But on the quantum sense, you could. But that's only people who think that things like this is random. There are people who have stipulated and ideas where they've said that there's things like pilot theory where what's happening is that there are invisible forces that dictate where electrons are able to come into existence at. The same way you have electrons that quantum leap from orbit to orbit depending upon how much energy is in them on an atom, and they don't travel the distance. They just quantum teleport to the other space, right?
That's what you're saying. So here's sort of what you're saying. Still, others think the photon passes through and reflects, but we're only able to see we're able to see only one of these outcomes, whichever it is. The underlying causes are cloaked.
See, that's actually a
way
third.
We're measuring it.
That's actually a third thing.
That's a third thing.
Yeah, because there's the people that believe that the pilot theory is what it is it's energy ribbons, and where these things collect is where the photons appears. But that last one is what this lady in Tennessee is trying to prove. I was going to talk about this earlier. There's a lady in Tennessee in a lab, and she's got this big giant electromagnet, and she's firing subatomic particles past it, and she's looking for how they decay because she's trying to prove that another universe exists, that there's actually parallel universes by watching how the subatomic particles will disappear and or not. Like that last sentence was saying where some people believe that they do both. She's looking for the evidence that the one that we see is affected by how the other one depletes into the other universe. So yeah, nobody knows, right? But there's like three main ways of looking at it.
What's the implications if there's okay, she proves it. There's parallel universes. Then what?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, I don't even know what that is. Like, I hear this talked about all the time. Like, oh, there could be parallel, and we've been bumped into a parallel universe and all that. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Well, first consider that how you get there is just a theory.
And how do I hitch a ride to the peace, love, and
yeah? How do you get to that?
How
universe?
do I get to that one?
How do you dial it in?
I want a ticket, man.
How do you Stargate it?
Right.
Well, I mean, understand that the idea is a theory in and of itself, right? There may, in fact, not be any other parallel universes.
Okay.
This is just some people believe there might be. Some math supports it. Here's somebody trying to use a theory to prove that it exists. And they might not be able to do it, right? And she didn't know what the implications would mean either. She wasn't even sure if she said that she felt that it would be that another parallel universe would be a universe like ours with planets and stars, but things would look different. Like stars would be in different positions,
right?
Planets would be different, and this sort of thing, right? There wouldn't be parallel U's or anything like that. Not parallel dimensions, but just some other universe with other people and stuff,
right?
And that's what she was saying that she felt that they would find. But there would be no way to prove this. All she could say is that there's something happening on our end of the universe to a subatomic particle that she feels is directly related and can only be related to what's happening to its counterpart in the mirror universe. And, how they split off from each other in this experiment. And that's only if she can prove that that's even happening.
Right, she hasn't done that yet.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Okay.
So it's a lot of, who knows, man.
Kind of speculative type shit. Yeah.
Sure. And
but there's experiments to that end, trying to at least quantify that, make it measurable and repeatable.
Yeah, because and this is the whole crux of what this is, right? They're talking about quantum physics, and they're saying, look, all this math we have that says this, that, and the other thing. But the weird thing about it is most of the experiments show that the math is fundamentally correct. And we would have never predicted this, and this isn't physics. So maybe there's a way to unify these two kinds of physics, but at this point in time...
That's the grand unifying theory. That's the holy grail for all of this, right?
Right. But at this point in time, we can't find it. No.
Yeah.
And you're literally...
we don't know what it is. It exists.
We don't. We don't know if it exists.
Well, it has to, or there wouldn't be a quantum and a what's the opposite? A physical world. There wouldn't
be a quantum and a macro.
Right. There wouldn't be both of them if there wasn't something that allowed them to exist together.
Well,
does it? Or is it just a simulation, man?
Who knows? That's what I'm saying. Nobody knows. You would assume that there is, and people keep looking. And, of course, a lot of the experiments they do prove that the underlying math is correct.
This is the shit where it starts to bend my brain, okay? Although theories that predict a multiverse are entirely objective, no observers or observer-dependent quantities appear in the basic equations. They do not eliminate the observer's role, but merely relocate it. They say that our view of reality is heavily filtered, and we have to take that into account when applying the theory. If we do not see a photon do two contradictory things at once, it does not mean that the photon is not doing both.
Right. So aren't they objectively saying that essentially, aren't they just saying that if the possibility exists for this to have some kind of a duality?
It may be doing both, but we only see one of them.
Right. And if there's a duality, that might imply that there's another universe that's doing something in, right?
It might just mean we get to see only one of them, is what it says. Likewise, in cosmology, our mere existence creates a bias in our observations. We necessarily live in a universe that can support human life, so our measurements of the cosmos might not be fully representative.
We obviously exist here.
Yeah.
Even if our instruments can't detect how it's happening.
Parallel universes do not alter the truth that we experience. If you suffer in this universe, it is little comfort that the near duplicate of you thrive elsewhere. Yeah. Bitch. How come you got that existence? But these other worlds are corrosive to the pursuit of broader truth. Because the other universes are generally not observable, they represent an insuperable limit to our direct knowledge. If those universes are utterly unlike our own, our empirical knowledge is not merely limited but deceived. The laws of physics risk descending into anarchy. They do not say that one thing happens rather than another, because both happen, and which we see as blind luck. What the fuck? The distinction between fact and fiction is just a matter of location. Doesn't that bend your brain though, man? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it's interesting. The laws of physics risk descending into anarchy. You went too far.
Oh, yeah, the laws of physics. That's where it said it here in the article, right?
Yeah.
The laws of physics are at risk of descending into anarchy. They do not say that one thing happens rather than another because both happen. And
right.
That which we see is blind luck.
Right. So they're saying if there's parallel universes, then what's happening in our world and our laws of physics are not the same as what's happening in theirs. Yeah, and if you compare that with all the universes that could be, that means that our universe and our laws of physics are just blind luck.
And they're just ours.
Yeah, they're just ours. They're unique unto this universe, and they're really not laws of physics at all. And
there may be no explanation for how certain things work together because that thing relies on a law of physics we can never
and just
see.
Like you were saying, aren't we going to find the grand unified theory? And I'm like, maybe, like maybe not. Maybe we're in a situation that there's no
where we're in a derivative existence, and that because we can't see that other thing, we don't realize we can measure it. We can see that it's repeatable.
We can measure our shit.
Yeah, we can measure it on our end.
But we can't measure their shit, and we never will measure their shit. Even if we could prove that they existed, how could we measure it? And if we went there, we might not even be able to exist because the laws of physics would be different.
What the hell? Okay, so how would you ever know? You'll never know unless you try. But there could be an end to this where we can't go any further.
Possibly.
Because we just figure out that the other shit that happens is based on physics. We just can't exist
in that world.
Yeah.
It's no different than imagination for us. And then you kind of circle back into philosophy, like, are you dreaming the dream or is the dream dreaming you? You know, I mean, in a cosmology that's set up like that, there isn't really any difference, and it is blind luck, right? Because it doesn't matter. You can't exist over there, and they can't exist over here, even though they exist.
You can't say, though, that you don't have some influence over existence, because that's demonstrable, right?
Over our existence?
Yeah, over our immediate, intimate existence. Yeah. We have some say over that, but in the that's kind of like the giant volcano.
But what if you could prove you lived in a universe that you could only prove anything in your universe that you couldn't prove?
Well, that's what they're saying, is that may be the case.
But I think that's unlikely.
You think there's a multiverse, or you think it's unlikely there's a multiverse?
I think it's unlikely that there's a multiverse. And it's just really a matter of opinion, right? I'd rather go with what Roger Penrose's objective reduction, where these things, due to the fine-scale space structure of space-time, that it cuts them off. It cuts them off like buds on a flower,
right? Like just pinches them off through a path of existence.
And that the wave function collapse into reality is what we get.
Yeah. And that's delayed, right? That's not even...
like there is a certain amount of influence that the human mind is supposed to have over that process, according to OR. So
see, that's what I mean. Like, I think there is some self-determination.
Yeah, it satisfies...
But you know what? My ego would almost require it.
Well, I'm just saying.
So is that bias?
It's just, OR speculates a world wherein there's both, wherein there is chaos entropy in the second law of thermodynamics, but there is also a part of it that's able to make a selection and make decisions. But once you've made that decision, you have little control over it, according to this.
This one comes from space.com. This was the same one that made a big deal out of an astronaut getting divorced while in space. So let's take this with a grain of salt. Dark energy experiment in a London basement shows no traces of mysterious fifth force. The chameleon theory and theories of modified gravity are now under threat.
Okay, so I've talked about chameleon gravity at least 2 times with some of our guests that we've had on the show in defense of what they were talking about, right? And also, I would like to point out that I'm speculative about, or suspicious about how this happened in the basement.
Okay. An experiment to seek out dark energy, or the so-called fifth force, has come up empty-handed, casting doubt over some theories related to the mysterious cosmic matter. Dark energy is believed to be responsible for the expansion of the universe, counteracting gravity, and is considered to be the fifth force acting on matter after gravity, the electromagnetic force, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. I always put a U in there. And while dark energy makes up around 68% of the universe, the force still has scientists scratching their heads. So they still can't measure this, is kind of what they're saying, right?
Oh, they can't. They can measure it, but they can't find it.
Well,
that's the problem. They can measure it all day, but they can't find out. They can't actually find a piece of it. It's like most gravity is caused from matter, right? Which is all around us, right? Everything's made of matter, and that's easy. But then we see the same thing happening in regions where there's none of this shit that we call matter at all. And so we're like, we don't know what it is.
And we're saying something else is making something happen.
Something else is causing gravity, right? Something else is making gravity happen in these areas, and we don't see any matter. And we live in a universe where, as far as we know, the only thing that produces gravity is generally matter.
Okay. In the new experiment, scientists at the Imperial College London and the University of Nottingham in the United Kingdom aim to test the theory that dark energy is weaker when it is surrounded by other matter, such as planets, but stronger in a vacuum-like area, such as empty space. That would mean dark energy operates opposite of how gravity works.
If it
anti-gravity.
And that's chameleon theory in gravity, that gravity is different throughout the universe. That's one of the things some of our guests had said, that that they speculated that gravity was different in different places of the universe. That would be chameleon gravity, which is why I kept bringing that up.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's what they're saying here.
Using a tabletop setup in a London basement lab, the researchers placed a metal sphere the size of a marble and a single atom. How they do that? In a vacuum chamber to observe whether dark energy acts on single atoms. If there had, in fact, been a fifth force acting between the atom and the metal sphere, then the atom would have deviated slightly as it got closer to the sphere, but the experiment failed to show that. Quote, this experiment connecting atomic physics and cosmology has allowed us to rule out a wide class of models that have been proposed to explain the nature of dark energy and will enable us to constrain many more dark energy models. Edmund Copeland, a physics professor at the University of Nottingham School of Physics and Astronomy and co-author of the study, said in a statement from Imperial College. So see, this is the funny thing about how failure works in science, right? Is it's not a failure because now it tells everybody else where to stop looking.
Yeah.
In the sense, right?
So there's probably a lot of theories that include subatomic particles for giving an explanation of what it is that we can't see that's causing gravity, because there are some subatomic particles like neutrinos that have mass, right? So if we could say that we could build a theory around subatomic particles that had mass that would explain dark energy, that's a possibility. But now if they do this test here where they've actually tested it on atoms, then they can rule out that a lot of subatomic particles is probably not going to be what this is. We don't know what it is still, but we can say it's probably not this shit because we've done some tests and it doesn't look like
that's it.
Yeah.
So stop wasting your time. Stop investing money that way.
Yeah, like look in this other direction maybe, potentially.
But this definitely leaves open the question, again, that we know the effect of gravity, but we don't necessarily know what makes it happen.
Right. And thus here you have something that's making gravity, which we don't know what makes gravity to begin with, but we know that it's not what we thought that it was for the most part. So it just deepens the mystery that much more. And
here we are.
Yeah. This is anybody's explanation is as good as anybody else's, as long as that explanation can account for the things that we've already
measured and sort of explained.
Yeah, and categorized.
Or how those get altered in cause and why.
Exactly, yeah.
So we talk about this, again, I like talking about social media and personal security a lot, right? It comes up on the show. So this one came up from Forbes. Apple just gave 1.4 billion iPad and iPhone users a reason to leave. Earlier this month, Facebook gave its 1.3 billion users the perfect reason to delete their accounts. Now Apple appears to have done the same for its 1.4 billion iPhone and iPad users worldwide. Last month, The Guardian revealed Apple was employing contractors to listen to and, quote, grade Siri recordings, and that they regularly heard confidential information from iPhone and iPad users, including medical information, drug deals, and recordings of couples having sex.
So how did Siri get activated during that action?
I'm trying to figure that out, right? And I just sat here and said it's not because they're turning your microphone on that that's how they're figuring out what to sell you. And then here we're finding out, but
either that or someone's yelling, "Hey Siri," during sex.
Right. Oh, Siri. Make sure my phone didn't turn on. And now a new report from the Irish Examiner has given a sense of scale to what was happening. Quote, contractors in Cork, Ireland were expected to each listen to more than 1,000 recordings from Siri every shift before Apple suspended the practice last month.
That had to be a dismal job.
Explains the Examiner, who got its information from an employee who had their contract abruptly terminated this week. Well, when you tell people what they're actually doing. The Examiner understands that over 300 employees at the contractor Global Tech were let go following the Guardian's report, which puts the 1,000 recordings per shift into context. Neither Apple nor Globe Tech have commented on the numbers. They're just going to come out and tell you. Quote, mostly it was users with Canadian, Australian, or UK accents who were heard, and there was a smaller team working on users with European languages, says the employee. Staff at the contractor Globe Tech were then required to transcribe and grade the recordings to see how Siri was triggered and whether the query was dealt with successfully.
I mean, they are trying to get better,
And unfortunately, when you have a device that responds to what you're saying, it has to listen to you. Mm-hmm. And that means it's going to do shit that you probably don't want it to do until the technology gets better.
Yeah.
But they're basically using their install base as beta testers.
Yeah.
To make the software work better.
The problem is they're doing it without them knowing it.
That's right. Yeah. It's not an opt-in type thing. Right. It's an opt-out thing.
Yes.
Providing some respite, the employee explained that the recordings they heard were anonymized and typically very short because occasionally we would hear personal data or snippets of conversations. I understood the reasons why the company was doing it, but I could see why people would feel it was a breach of privacy because they weren't telling people. Mm-hmm. It is worth noting that Apple is not alone in this practice. Amazon, Google, and the aforementioned Facebook have all come clean about similar practices, though it is Apple in particular which has promoted itself as the only. Like, my phone is over here lighting up and shit, dude. It is tripping
you're
me.
Talking about
it is tripping me out.
It's hearing you say Apple, and it's like, wait, I think they're talking about us, man.
Where was I at? Which has promoted itself as the only tech company you can trust. As you turn off your Apple phone. In fact, the company states on its privacy page that, quote, at Apple, we believe privacy is a fundamental human right. In a statement to the Irish Examiner, Apple said it is, quote, committed to customer privacy and made the decision to suspend Siri grading while we conduct a thorough review of our process.
We're committed to hold on a minute. Yeah, fire those.
Okay,
we're committed to your privacy now.
It's like, move the mic. What the fuck were we doing? Okay, fire them sons of bitches right now. We're still committed to privacy. They can't
100%.
Yeah, we 100%. Hey, at least they fired somebody.
Yeah.
Fucking Zuckerberg and them yahoos haven't done that.
They fired the people we found out. Yeah.
But again, the ones we caught.
Right.
Yeah, we're not done doing it.
Cork Island, one place.
In one place where they're still doing journalism.
And probably don't all have iPhones.
So the last article here, Mr. Smith, this comes from thenextweb.com. Bezos and Musk's satellite internet could save Americans $30 billion a year. That sounds like a good thing, doesn't it?
Yes.
LEOs will change the game. Low Earth orbit satellites for broadband internet access are beginning to display signs of real potential. Recently, Amazon chief Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, pulled back the curtain on its space intentions by announcing Project Kuiper, Kuiper. That sounds right.
Like the Kuiper Belt.
Yeah. A 3,236 satellite constellation. Additionally, Elon Musk's SpaceX Starlink recently launched a rocket containing 60 satellites from Florida's Cape Canaveral. The fight for space internet supremacy is on. Both players, alongside others like OneWeb, are spending billions in space in hopes of making further billions annually once the satellites go into service for consumers in the U.S. and around the globe. I guess I'm glad that there's more than one company doing this. It sounds like it's putting an awful lot of shit in space, though.
Yeah, the ones that Elon is putting into space are currently the brightest objects that we can see from our planet, I believe.
Yeah, and there's going to be a bunch more of them. But I think they're doing something like they're painting them with a special black now so that they don't reflect light so much.
Okay.
Because of the complaints of the first ones. But yeah, I've heard that there's like astronomers and stuff that are really bent.
So what you're saying is that 300 years from now, after the apocalypse has killed everyone or almost everyone, and then time has went by and people are starting to come back. Some people will base their mythology on the real bright stars that are circling the planet.
Earth. And then you know what's going to happen?
They'll find the dark ones and they'll attribute their evil myths to it.
Yeah, but eventually they're going to put rockets into space and they're going to find these things and then they're going to say it's aliens that did it. Right?
That they were seeded by an alien civilization. Maybe. I don't know. There might be archives up there. Remember, there's the mouse piglets and human DNA and archive on the moon.
The alien folks, isn't there this thing they call like the Black Dreadnought or something, and it's a weird meteor that sits like right over top of one of the Earth's poles and doesn't move?
I don't know.
So Maybe. They think that's what that is that's a record of the previous civilization, and it's like it's a weird geostationary orbit.
I've never even heard of that, actually.
I could be completely making this up, or what I read could be completely made up too. So I wouldn't base anything on it. The fight for I already said that. SpaceX will initially launch service to North America, but once its full array is in place, the company has plans to roll the service out across the entire planet. Ostensibly, anywhere with access to open skies could be covered. Amazon has global aspirations for its project as well. These low Earth orbit ventures have the potential to dramatically shift the broadband internet market and save consumers tens of billions of their own. My colleagues and I have analyzed U.S. market pricing data, which suggests that the technology could save Americans more than $30 billion per year.
I know we do a lot of conspiracy things, but it's things when I see this sort of thing that makes me think if there's going to be an AI failure that takes over everything on the planet,
that like this
from Amazon or Walmart or some business that's selling you stuff and trying to get data, and it has all of that, and something goes terribly wrong with that, and that's the irony of it being like a consumer-based AI that takes over everything.
Well, what it'll be, man, is it will figure out based on so if the AI really wanted to get rid of all of us, all it has to do is sell us really unhealthy habits. Combinations of habits that have and eventually it'll just, because it's got nothing but time, right? So eventually it'll just weed us all out.
I'm hoping it tries to archive us.
Somehow?
Yeah, build big arcologies and try to just archive us into different time units and stuff. Like this is the 1800s and this is the Neolithic period and this is humanity's 20th century. But
like we're in the zoo hypothesis kind of thing, only on a much smaller scale. LEO satellites promise to bring latency broadband to millions of Americans. The satellite orbit is extremely close to Earth, between 99 and 1,200 miles versus the 22,000 miles of traditional geostationary orbit satellites, which means less time to transfer information. For gamers, this means lower latency, which is a huge deal. Well, that means you can shoot the other guy before he shoots you.
So imagine if they're lowering their satellites because their limitation is the speed of light, right? How some of this quantum teleportation of three-dimensional objects would be beneficial. It wouldn't matter where your satellites were. There would be no limit
to the speed of light. There would be no need for satellites.
There would be no need to worry about it. You could build a base on Mars, as an example.
And it would still be instantaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's mind-numbing. When you think about that as a method for communication, right, there will be no more latency. There's no such thing. So when you're video conferencing with someone on the other side of the world, it would be real time.
Yep.
And all you got to be able to do is flip enough strings
or
and bits
on Mars,
on and off,
or on Jupiter Station, or wherever.
Yeah. Yeah, so that whole thing with, what was that, when they went to the black hole Matthew McConaughey movie? I can't remember what it's called. Where they got the messages, they'd send the message back to Earth, but it would take it 5 years or whatever to get there. And
I can't remember either. But Hans Zimmerman done the music for it.
Oh, you remember Interstellar? That, right? Interstellar, yeah, okay. I think that's what it's called. So to lower latency, the arrays will be precisely mapped into massive constellations to give maximum coverage. LEO technology will offer robust internet access to underserved and rural communities lacking wired, low-latency broadband options. The arrival of this technology is likely to drive down monthly internet prices for hundreds of millions of Americans. I like this idea, but it's giving Bubba and Scooter access to.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it kind of ties in, but I think it's a good thing, man. I don't know.
Maybe.
Ultimately, we'll see.
It's happening.
Well, here we go. Strap it on.
Yeah.
Americans with access to multiple broadband level options for internet service tend to pay lower prices on average than those who have just one option in their area. Yeah, but there's no such thing as price fixing. Remember that. According to further analysis of our market-wide pricing database covering plans and pricing of more than 2,000 ISPs, the average lowest available monthly price for the estimated 104 million Americans with only one wired broadband provider is $68. For the 75 million Americans with two choices, that average lowest price drops to $59. For the lucky 15 million Americans with five or more choices, it's $47. So yes, we're all getting fucked. Because LEO technology will ostensibly be available everywhere in the U.S. as well as globally, this indicates the powerful influence the entrance of the technology will have on internet prices as new markets gain access to an additional true broadband option and competition heats up. You know what else this is going to do that's really interesting? I never thought about this. These are going to be available all over the world. So in countries that have tried to firewall themselves off from from information from everywhere, it's going to make that all you have to do is have a device.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to get to information without, well, I guess the broker or the firewall will then be like Amazon or Elon Musk or whoever it is. They're going to be the ones that decide, ooh.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
we
that's
interrupt
interesting.
your internet broadcasting to describe the sale that's going on tomorrow worldwide.
Well, the thing is that the ability to access news and information will. So China's is a prime example. You know, they're a country that has like their own internet, and they only allow certain things to come in and go out, right? So that the government has its own firewall, and largely like Facebook and Google and these people have sort of acquiesced to their demands. But you have a company like Elon Musk's SpaceX company out here
for the world.
He's going to cover the world, and does he give a shit about your firewall or your requirements? Okay, if he does, then he's supporting
their ideology.
Or if he does it in North Korea, let's say, then he's supporting that regime by saying we're going to honor this firewall protection. If he doesn't, they start shooting his satellites out of space.
Maybe.
Right, or whatever, like this is a whole, well, we know that India did it.
It's possible. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. He's got 60 up there now.
Maybe a space force isn't such a terrible thing after all, kind of idea, but it's still the same shit. It's still protecting rich people's assets who put them places they shouldn't have.
He's got 60 satellites up there now, and with every intention of what he's doing being made public, and none of them have been shot down yet.
Yeah, but they're focusing only on the United States, North America, which doesn't have these super restrictive issues that some of these other countries have, right?
Well, yeah, but they know where he's heading. They know he's intending on doing more.
I think it's going to be a shooting it down over their airspace type situation, or you know what I mean? Like now we're going to say countries have their borders extend infinitely up into space somehow.
Maybe. Yeah. He might be able to keep them out there by design too.
Boy, that would be a mess because there's a lot of satellites that just go around the planet. They just move constantly. It's like, oh, we got to take a left here and go around this border.
If it's possible at all.
I don't think it is. Our projections show that the low latency LEO satellite internet is likely to have a similar impact on average regional prices as wired, low latency wired providers. Extrapolating this additional competitor across all U.S. households, the introduction of LEO satellite internet could save Americans a bunch of fucking money. We've said that like 12 times. I guess it makes sense, right? The more options you have, the more competitive the market has to be. The less options you have, the less competitive the market has to be.
The more the one's going to take advantage of you.
Dude, this is going to easily happen in our time. That you're going to be able to have a cell phone that has as much download speed as your wired home computer has. Even probably reaching speeds like if you were on fiber. So
I want to live in the world where optics is the slow means of communicating. I want them to perfect that quantum teleportation of three-dimensional objects.
Because you want to be quantum teleported somewhere?
No, because I want instantaneous
communications.
And living in a world where what's slow is optics. If you got to wait on light traveling at 186,000 miles per second, right, to do something, you're wasting too much time. Like I'm just saying I want to live in the futuristic world, right, where light is considered to be pedestrian.
I just read something. I didn't put it on the show because it was a little chewy. About a new device, sort of like a light emitting diode, but so the way you send a pulse of light and then it's red on the other side is a pulse, and then that's converted back into information. It just you don't have the attenuation or limitations of resistance and wire that limit how far you can send a signal in these. They're light pipes, right? Mm-hmm. But now they're actually working on a device that so it takes energy and it emits it as light, but when it receives the energy on the other end, it takes the light and turns it back into energy. So there's no transmission loss through the wire, and you don't have. So instead of sensing it on the other end and then converting it, so then it's gone.
Yeah,
the original energy was spent to send the packet. And then it has to be replicated on the other end, right? Now that packet of light becomes the energy on the other end, so it makes the power consumption of those devices drop remarkably.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But it also gives the concept of transmitting power through light.
Yeah,
across distances, right? Because if it'll do it in a tube, you could do it with a laser too. So if you have a space station, you need to get power to somehow. You can shoot it with a laser and turn that energy back into electricity or whatever it is they need to function up there instead of having fuel cells and all that other kind of crazy stuff.
There's some exoplanets that they found recently that they were suspecting might be actually better at sustaining human life than Earth.
You're kidding?
No, They were talking about the possibility.
Like, how's that work?
I don't know, man. That's what I was wondering. I didn't read the article, though, but I read like a little bit of it, but they were essentially saying...
Well, that's just because we haven't been there yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it's curiously it's speculative, but I mean, just the idea that there's possibly a place that would be better for us than where we're at, whether that's because we've destroyed some things and changed some things here, right, or just for whatever reason, like just a planet that's more hospitable in all of its regions than our planet is. I mean, certainly there's places on our planet like the Sahara Desert
that are inhospitable.
And a planet that didn't have a giant Sahara Desert in it, a planet that maybe didn't have anything but maybe polar caps or nothing like that at all. I don't know what the criteria was, but whatever it was, there's that possibility. I thought that was an interesting thing because sometimes people feel that this place is special for that reason,
right?
Because we come from it and it sustains us. But
I'm on Team Earth, man.
Right? Yeah, the possibility there's something else better might actually not be such a far-fetched situation.
That's Elon Musk's big thing, right? We have to go now. We have to keep going. We have to go to Mars. We have to go to the next place.
He was talking about nuking Mars.
Yeah, but he wants to do that to start global warming to recreate an atmosphere on the planet or something, right? I've heard this before. Or something.
He's going to have to affect the spin of it if he's going to keep that atmosphere.
So we'll just nuke it. That sounds like an Elon Musk answer, doesn't it? Like, I need a shit ton of energy and I need to create rotation. How do I do that?
It sounds like a Ripley answer from Aliens.
Right. We dust off, nuke the site from orbit.
It's the only way to be safe. Right. Yeah. That's what it sounds like to me.
To be sure.
I'm just curious how he's going to, how if they made an atmosphere, how they wouldn't lose it again.
Because they're going to make it spin with nuclear bombs.
Okay.
Weren't you paying attention?
Nope.
Me neither. I don't know for sure that that's what he said. I've heard this theory before, but it definitely sounds like an Elon Musk type answer.
Yeah.
I need X. Here's the tools I have to do X. Okay, what's the problem? That's how he sort of works.
Oh, nobody in the world would pay for this. Oh, no. Go ahead. Here you go. Get it done.
Yeah. I heard him in an interview talking about when he started drilling that tunnel in Los Angeles or in California for the boring project, right? And they're just digging a big ass fucking tunnel. And who gave you like a permit to dig a tunnel? He goes, oh, it's real simple. You just tell them you're going to dig a big hole and they just give you a permit. Like, there's nothing to it. And he's like, getting a permit to dig a tunnel is super easy. Like, he's like, you're thinking, in Los Angeles, you're going to dig a tunnel in a place that shakes, But then I heard him explain like the physics behind it, that like waves on the ocean, like a submarine doesn't feel the waves. And the same thing is true on ground too. Mm-hmm. That earthquakes are largely just surface events. They just happen on the surface. If you're down under the surface, you don't even know it's happening because everything is moving relative to itself. It's the shit on the surface. It's all falling over and being busted loose and sliding around everywhere. But once you get like 15 feet below the surface, everything's moving together. So it's not a big deal. Mm. I was like, oh, I guess I never thought about that way. I think Los Angeles tunnels, bad idea. Like people are in a tunnel and you have an earthquake and it all collapses, but that's not the case. Mm. All right, brother, you got anything else you want to cover today?
I'll refrain from any family stories.
Why is that?
Just because, just not the time.
Okay. All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Check us out at www.noshitcast.com. That's KNOWSHITCAST.com for Eric. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. Leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you give us a rating on iTunes. We'd dig that if you would. If you like what we do, give us a share. It would be greatly appreciated. And we'll catch you all next time. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bicycle.